On the 10th of November 2021, the world went mad. Bitcoin broke through $69,000. The whole world looked at the charts. Elon Musk pummeled the dogs, euphoria, and no one at all, noticed that 3 days earlier, in complete silence, the network that should have appeared back in 2015 and killed this circus 10 years ago was launched. Do you think Bitcoin's story ended in 2009? In the Ethereum white paper, read by millions, there is a reference to one paper, a work that Vitalik Buterin called brilliant, but was afraid to use. This technology was called Ghost. For 10 years, this Ghost dusted in academic archives while the market was building financial pyramids. But in the 21st year, without ICOs, without venture capital funds, and without marketing, the Ghost became flesh. My name is Mr. Dark Web, and today I will show you a project that came back from oblivion to finish the work of Satoshi Nakamoto. I've been reluctant to take on this topic for a long time. Right now, every second project is screaming revolution. Every third promises to kill Bitcoin, and every other one turns out to be just another scheme to siphon money from gullible people. I've seen enough to build up an immunity to loud claims. But this story is different. It did not begin with an anonymous manifesto or promises of super profits. It began in an academic laboratory at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, with a maths problem that a PhD student solved for fun, and with a formula that could have changed everything if someone had paid attention to it. When I first came across Caspa, I did what I always do. I started looking for a catch. Where's the ICO? Where are the tokens for insiders? Where are the venture capital funds that bought up half the issue before launch? Nothing. Honest launch. No pre-mining. No reserved coins. Code in the public domain. It looks so clean, it seems suspicious. They don't do that in 2021. That's what they did in 2009 when Satoshi launched Bitcoin. And that's when I started digging deeper. What I found made me rethink the last 10 years of cryptocurrency history. It turned out that the technology behind Caspa existed long before it was launched. It was described in academic articles. It was quoted in the main Ethereum document. It was known by all the key players in the industry. And she was buried, not because it didn't work. It was because it seemed too complicated, too ambitious, too dangerous to the status quo. While the crypto world was drowning in scams, while people were losing their savings on endless ICOs, while exchanges were crashing one after another, the solution to the blockchain's main problem lay in the public domain. In academic journals that no one reads, in archives that no one looks at. 10 years. For 10 years, this technology has been waiting to happen while the industry has been doing anything but real innovation. This story is not about another prospect coin. I am not a financial advisor, and I am not going to give you investment advice. This story is about the most expensive mistake in the history of cryptocurrencies, about the technology that everyone knew and no one used, about people who worked in silence for 10 years while the rest of us were chasing fast money, and about the question that's been bugging me: how many more of these ghosts are gathering dust in the archives right now while we're looking at charts and buying pictures of monkeys? To understand how we got here, we have to go back to the beginning. The year 2013, Jerusalem, to a laboratory where a graduate student named Jonathan Sompolinsky was trying to solve a problem that Satoshi Nakamoto himself had left unsolved. The year 2013, Jerusalem, In a lab at Hebrew University sits a graduate student who is supposed to be a mathematician. His name is Yonatan Sampolinsky. He is 20-something years old, and he has no idea that in 8 years he will launch one of the most talked-about cryptocurrencies in the world. Right now, he's just trying to finish his master's program. His supervisor, Professor Aviv Zohar, suggests he look into Bitcoin. Sampolinsky declines. For someone with a mathematical background, Bitcoin seems too practical, too down to earth. He wants to solve real problems, like proving Goldbach's hypothesis and winning $1 million in prize money. Spoiler, he didn't prove the hypothesis. 6 months later, after unsuccessfully trying to make a mathematical breakthrough, Sampolinsky returns to Zohar. "Okay," he says, "let's look at this Bitcoin of yours. This decision will change the history of cryptocurrencies, although no one realizes it at the time." Zohar poses a simple question to Sampolinsky. What's wrong with Bitcoin? Not in the why is it bad sense, but in the sense of where are the mathematical limits? Where is the ceiling? What prevents the system from working faster, processing more transactions, scaling up? Sampolinsky starts digging. He finds a problem that Satoshi Nakamoto himself left unsolved. It's about speed. Bitcoin creates a new block about once every 10 minutes. That's slow. Very slow. If you buy coffee with Bitcoins, the seller has to wait at least 10 minutes to make sure the transaction goes through. And to be safe, all 60. Why can't you just speed up the creation of blocks? Because that's when the system breaks down. Here's the problem. When blocks are created too fast, they start competing with each other. Imagine two miners at different ends of the planet. Both find a solution and create a new block at the same time. But the network can only accept one of them. The second one becomes an orphan block. The miner's work is wasted. With slow block creation, this is not critical. Orphans are rare. But if you speed up the process, there will be a lot of them. A lot of them. The network will start wasting energy on blocks that will never make it into the chain. Security will go down. Centralization will increase because large mining pools with fast internet will get an advantage. Satoshi knew that. That's why he chose 10 minutes. It was a compromise between speed and security, and that compromise became the ceiling for the entire industry. Everyone who came after, Litecoin, Dogcoin, dozens of others, just moved the slider back and forth. A little faster, a little slower. But nobody solved the problem itself. Sampolinsky decided to give it a try. The idea that occurred to him was both simple and radical. What if you don't throw away the orphan blocks? What if we used them? In a classic blockchain, a blockchain is exactly that. A chain. One block after another. A linear structure. If two blocks claim the same spot, one wins, the other disappears. Sampolinsky proposed a different model. Instead of a chain, a tree. Instead of an either-or choice, all blocks are accounted for, even those not included in the main branch. He called it Ghost, Greedy Heaviest Observed Subtree, a name only a mathematician could come up with. The essence of the protocol. Instead of following the longest chain, as in Bitcoin, the network follows the heaviest branch, the one with the most computational work put into it, including side blocks. It changed everything. Now the orphan blocks were not wasted. They strengthened the security of the main branch. Miners were rewarded even if their block didn't get into the main chain. And most importantly, the system could be accelerated without losing reliability. In December of 2013, Sampolinsky and Zohar published a paper, an academic paper that was read by several hundred specialists, and one 19-year-old computer programmer from Canada. His name was Vitalik Buterin. In 2013, he was already well known in the crypto community, co-founder of Bitcoin Magazine, an active participant in forums, a man with ideas, big ideas. Buterin wanted to create more than just digital money. He wanted to build a world computer, a platform on which any blockchain-protected program could run. He would call it Ethereum, and for this platform, he needed speed. Bitcoin's 10 minutes per block is too slow for a world computer. Buterin wanted blocks every few seconds, but he understood the orphan problem. He realized that speeding up would kill security. And then he read the work of Sampolinsky and Zohar. In the Ethereum white paper published in 2014, there is an entire section dedicated to Ghost. Buterin calls the protocol a solution to the problem of fast blocks. He writes that Ghost will allow Ethereum to run much faster than Bitcoin without losing security. The Ghost protocol was supposed to be the heart of the world's second largest cryptocurrency. I had to. On the 30th of July in the year 2015, Ethereum launched. It was one of the most anticipated launches in the history of cryptocurrencies. Thousands of developers were preparing to build applications on the new platform. Investors poured in millions. The world was waiting for a revolution, and the revolution came, but not the one that was promised. When I pulled up the logs from that launch, when I read the developer discussions from that time, I realized something had gone wrong. Ghost, the very protocol that Buterin called genius, was in Ethereum, but not completely. The developers took only a part of the idea. They left the mechanism of uncle blocks, which allowed to take into account some side blocks, but the principle of chain selection itself, it wasn't touched. Ethereum continued to follow the longest chain rule, like Bitcoin, like everyone else. 2 weeks after launch, the developers have finally abandoned the full-fledged Ghost. The reason? Too complicated. Too many calculations to determine the heaviest branch. Too risky to change the foundation of a working system. They took the treasure map, looked at it, and put it back on the shelf. The Ghost remained a ghost, and Sampolinsky, he didn't give up. While Ethereum was gaining billions of dollars in capitalization, while the world was going crazy over ICOs and smart contracts, and Israeli scientists kept working on his idea, 2016, he publishes Spectre, a new protocol for rapid transaction confirmation. 2018 is Phantom, another iteration, another improvement. All this time he realized that something was missing, that the original Ghost was just the beginning, that the real solution needed a different structure, not a chain, not a tree, something fundamentally different. And he found that something, but the world was too busy with other things to notice. The year is 2017. The world is going mad, but not like in 2021. Then it was euphoria, but in 17 it was a fever, gold fever. Only instead of gold, it was tokens. Instead of picks and shovels, white papers and smart contracts. Instead of the Klondike, it was Ethereum, ICO, initial coin offering, initial coin offering. If you didn't catch this time, you're lucky. If you did, you either got rich or lost everything. There was almost no third option. The idea seemed brilliant. Instead of spending years looking for investors, going through audits, proving the viability of a business, anyone could simply write a 20-page document, create an Ethereum token in 15 minutes, and announce a fundraiser. The money flowed. In 2017, projects raised more than $5 billion through ICOs. In the 18th year, almost $22 billion. People invested their savings in projects that had nothing but a beautiful website and promises. I remember those times. Every day is a new project. Every project is an Ethereum killer or a new Bitcoin. White papers written by copywriters for $200. Teams of stock photos. Roadmaps going back to the year 2025. And crowds of people willing to hand over money for the promise of a 100-fold profit. Remember BitConnect? BitConnect! Shouted the presenter on stage as thousands of people applauded. A classic pyramid scheme disguised as a crypto project. They promised up to 40% profit per month. In January 2018, the whole thing collapsed. $2.5 billion in capitalization evaporated in a matter of days. Pincoin and iFan, $660 million. The founders have disappeared. Centratech raised $25 million, even paid boxer Floyd Mayweather for advertising. The founders were arrested. Plexcoin promised 1,300% profit in a month. Regulators shut down the project a few weeks after its launch. And that's just the top. There are thousands of smaller projects underneath. Thousands of stories of people who invested everything and were left with nothing. What was Jonathan Sampolinsky doing at the time? He wrote scientific articles. While the crypto market was awash in money and scams, an Israeli scientist sat in his lab and worked on protocols. Spectre in 1916, Phantom in 18, mathematical proofs, peer review by colleagues, publications in academic journals, no ICOs, no tokens, no marketing. The contrast was so stark that it seemed unreal. On the one hand, projects that raised $100 million in a week on promises. On the other, a scientist who had spent 8 years working on a real solution to a real problem and hadn't made a cent on it. In 2018, Sampolinsky founded DAG Labs, a research company to turn his ideas into reality. They received $8 million in investment from Polychain Capital and several other funds. $8 million in 5 years of work. In a year when random projects raised more in a weekend. But Sampolinsky didn't care. He was up to the task. 2018-19, CryptoZyme. The ICO bubble has burst. Bitcoin fell from 20,000 to 3,000. Ethereum went from 1,400 to 80. 90% of the projects that raised millions disappeared. Just gone. Websites stopped working. Telegram feeds went silent. Founders deleted their accounts. Those who remained began to realize something was wrong with the system itself. Blockchains were slow. Transactions were expensive. Ethereum, which was supposed to be the world's computer, could barely keep up with the load. When CryptoKitties, a game about collecting digital kitties, was launched on the platform in late 17th, the network almost came to a standstill. Digital seals put down the world computer. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. But the industry has a knack for forgetting. 2020th year. DeFi summer. New hype, new promises, new ways to lose money, decentralized finance. Sounds serious, doesn't it? Banks without banks, no credit checks, yields in the hundreds of % per annum. I looked at it and couldn't believe my eyes. People haven't learned anything. Yield farming, liquidity mining. The names changed, but the essence remained the same. Put money here, get a token, sell the token while it is worth something, get out before anyone else. It wasn't a revolution in finance. It was a game of musical chairs with cryptocurrencies. Yam finances a project that has racked up almost $500 million of blocked funds in 2 days. And then they found a bug in the code, and the whole thing collapsed. SushiSwap, An anonymous developer created a copy of the popular protocol, raised over $1 billion, and then withdrew $13 million from the project's coffers. "I needed a holiday," he wrote afterwards, and hundreds of projects with names similar to the menu in a restaurant. Pickle, kimchi, hot dog, pizza. Each one promised something new. Every second one turned out to be either a scam or hacked. By the end of the year 2020, over $120 million had been stolen from DeFi protocols, and that's just what made the news. 2021, the time of the apes, NFT, non-fungible tokens. The idea was an interesting one, to create a unique digital certificate of ownership for art, for music, for anything. A technology with real potential. But you know what it turned into? Bored Ape Yacht Club. Bored monkeys. 10,000 pictures with monkeys in different hats and glasses. Minimum price at the peak. Over $100,000 per picture. $100,000 for a JPEG file with a monkey drawn on it. People took out loans to buy these pictures. Celebrities posted them as avatars. Brands paid millions for club membership. And that was just the beginning. CryptoPunks are pixelated portraits measuring 24 by 24 points. Some sold for tens of millions of dollars. Artist Beeple sold a collage of his work for $69 million at a Christie's auction. It became the third most expensive work by a living artist. And then the madness began. Everyone wanted their own NFT project. Celebrities stamped collections. Influencers sold unique images to their subscribers. Networks were flooded with transactions. Commissions skyrocketed. Ethereum, created for the world computer, was used mainly to trade pictures of monkeys and pixel heads. The great technology that Buterin cited in his white paper, the Ghost Protocol, was lying in the archives. Nobody needed it. While the world was deciding which monkey was more beautiful, stop for a second and think about it. 2013 to 2021 year, 8 years. In that time, the crypto industry has lost billions of dollars on scams, experienced several bubbles and crashes, never solved the basic problem of speed and scalability, and all this time, the solution existed. It was described, it was published, it was quoted in the main document of the world's second cryptocurrency, but no one was looking that way, because there was no fast money there. There were scientific papers and mathematical proofs. There was a scientist from Jerusalem who spent years polishing his idea instead of launching another token. This is the real story of cryptocurrencies, not the ups and downs of the charts, not the millionaires and bankruptcies, but the missed opportunities, technologies that could have changed everything and that got buried under a mountain of hype and greed. The autumn of 2021. The market is on the upswing again. Bitcoin is storming to new highs. NFT projects are raising millions. Every second starts his own meta-universe. And somewhere in Israel, a group of developers are getting ready to launch. No press releases, no adverts, no ambassadors or influencers. They spent 3 years turning academic papers into working code. They solved a problem that Ethereum couldn't solve in 15. They created what Sam Polinsky had envisioned back in 13. Block YAG, not chain, not a tree, a directed acyclic graph. And the GhostDAG protocol is an evolution of the very ghost that Buterin once called genius. On the 7th of November, 2021, at 6 o'clock in the evening UTC, the Caspa network went live. The world didn't notice it. 3 days later, everyone was looking at something else. Bitcoin was breaching 69,000. The euphoria had peaked. No one was thinking about some protocol from academic journals. No one knew that at that moment a whole other story was beginning. To understand what Sampolinsky did, you have to first understand why everything else didn't work. Imagine a queue in a bank. One teller, 100 customers, each one waiting for the previous one to be served. That's Bitcoin. Safe, secure, slow. If you want to speed it up, put in a second cashier. But then there's the problem. Who's first? Whose transaction is more important? Two cashiers can process the same payment differently at the same time. Chaos. This is why Bitcoin operates with a single queue, one block after another. The chain. Ethereum tried to speed up the queue by shortening the time between blocks. Instead of 10 minutes, it was 15 seconds. But this created a new problem. Blocks started to collide, like cars at an intersection without a traffic light. Some of the miners' work was wasted. Buterin's solution, those uncle blocks, was a crutch. It compensated for the losses of miners, but did not solve the fundamental problem. The queue was still a queue. It just moved a little faster. Now imagine a different picture. Not a queue, an avalanche. Hundreds of snowballs flying down the mountain at the same time. They don't wait for each other. They don't line up. Each one rolls in its own way, but they all go in the same direction. Downhill. It's a block dag. Directed acyclic graph. Directed acyclic graph. In a conventional blockchain, each block points to one previous block. Chain. Lineage. If two blocks are created at the same time, one survives, the other dies. In BlockDAG, each block can point to multiple previous blocks. Not a line, a web, not a chain, a web. Blocks don't compete, they coexist. Does it sound simple? On paper, yes. In practice, it's a nightmare. Because the question arises, in what order to process transactions? If blocks are created in parallel, if there is no single chain, how can we determine what came before? How to prevent double spending when a person tries to spend the same money twice? This is where the original ghost broke down. It's why Ethereum refused to implement it fully. It is too difficult to determine order in the chaos of parallel blocks. Sampolinsky has spent years tackling this challenge. Spectre. In 2016 was the first attempt. The protocol allowed fast confirmation of transactions, but did not provide full linear order of blocks. For simple payments, it was fine. For complex applications, not enough. Phantom in 2018 is the second iteration. Now the protocol could line up all the blocks in a clear sequence, but the algorithm was too heavy, computationally expensive, impractical for a real network. And that's when GhostDAG came along. The idea was to divide blocks into two categories, blue and red. Blue blocks are honest blocks created by honest miners. Red, suspicious blocks, possibly created by attackers or just late. How do you tell one from the other? Relationships. Honest miners see the network in roughly the same way. Their blocks link to similar previous blocks. They form a dense cluster, a group of well-connected nodes. Attacking or lagging miners create blocks that are poorly connected to the rest. They are out of the picture. GhostDAG finds the largest blue cluster and uses it as the basis for ordering. Red clusters are also included in the final ordering, but are placed later. This is how the protocol distinguishes honest work from attempts at manipulation. Now back to the avalanche. Hundreds of snowballs flying down the mountain. In a normal blockchain, you would try to line them up. This one first, this one second, this one third. It's a hopeless task when they fall at the same time. GhostDAG does things differently. It looks at the whole picture. It finds the mainstream, those snowballs that fly together in a tight group. Those are the blue ones, and those that fly separately, breaking out of the general movement, red. The mainstream becomes the backbone of order. The others are built around it. Result: you can create blocks every second. You can make 10 blocks per second. They won't compete. They will all go into the final order. Not a single one will go to waste. Bitcoin, 1 block per 10 minutes. Ethereum, 1 block per 15 seconds. Caspa at launch, 1 block per second. Now it's 10 blocks per second. The target is 100. It's not an incremental improvement. It's a different architecture. But there was another problem. All these protocols, Ghost, Spectre, Phantom, GhostDAG, existed only on paper, in scientific papers, in mathematical proofs. No one knew if they would work in the real world. In 2018, when Sampolinsky founded DAG Labs, work on implementation began. Turning formulas into code, theory into practice. 3 years of development, dozens of engineers, endless tests, and one principled solution: an honest launch. No ICO, no tokens for investors, no pre-mining, where founders pre-mine coins for themselves in advance. DAG Labs and their investors at Polychain have abandoned all of this. The code will be open source. Mining will be available to everyone from the first second. Like Bitcoin in 2009. 6 months before the launch, DAG Labs put the project into the public domain. It gave up all intellectual property rights. Caspa was no longer a product of the company. It became a public project. In a world where every crypto project was trying to squeeze the most money out of investors, it seemed like madness. Or as a principle. By the autumn of 2021, everything was ready. 8 years of research, 3 years of development, 4 iterations of the protocol, thousands of lines of code, and a technology that could process transactions faster than any existing proof-of-work blockchain, without losing security, without centralization, without the compromises that everyone else made. The ghost was ready. All that was left was to press the button. The 7th of November in the year 2021, Sunday, 6 o'clock in the evening, UTC, no press releases, no major media announcements, no countdowns on the website, just a message in the Discord channel for developers. The network is up and running. Genesis block, Caspa's first block, appeared without fanfare. Several hundred people around the world launched their nodes. The miners connected to the network. The first transactions went live. It was so quiet it seemed like a mistake. This is not how crypto projects are launched in the year 2021. In year 2021, a launch is an event. It's $1 million marketing campaign. It's influencers, ambassadors, listings on exchanges on day one. It's a hype. Caspa started up as if it were the year 2009. It was as if Satoshi Nakamoto had just posted the code and said, "It works. Use it." 3 days later, the world exploded. On the 10th of November, Bitcoin broke through $69,000, a historic high, euphoria. Every news channel, every blogger, every analyst talked only about it. Cryptocurrencies on magazine covers, predictions of 100,000 by the end of the year, 1 million by 2055. Twitter choked with joy. People posted screenshots of their briefcases, memes about Lamborghinis, "I told you so" jokes, and nobody at all was talking about any Caspa. I remember the feeling. The whole market was looking in one direction, at the charts, at the price, at the green candles, and somewhere on the periphery, in the shadow of this madness, a network was quietly working, which was going to change the rules of the game. It was the perfect contrast. A feast during the plague, dancing on the deck of the Titanic. Pick any metaphor, it'll do. While the crowd was celebrating another peak of the bubble, something real was sailing away in the dinghy, and no one was looking in that direction. For the first fortnight, CASPA worked. Blocks were being created every second. Transactions were going through. Miners were being rewarded. Everything was going according to plan. And then came the 21st of November. I read the logs from that day. I read the developers' Discord messages. And I realized what a horror it was. The network is up. It didn't slow down, didn't start glitching. It's up. Completely. Blocks stopped being created. Transactions stopped going through. Monitoring screens showed a deadline, a fortnight's work, 8 years of research, 3 years of development, and then silence. They found a critical bug in the code, a bug that caused the network to split. Different nodes saw a different picture. Consensus, the very agreement of all participants about the state of the system, broke down. Imagine you've been building a bridge for 8 years, checking every bolt, calculated every support, and then the bridge is open, the first cars drive over it, and it starts to crack. At this point, 99% of projects are doing one of two things. Option 1, they're lying. They say everything's under control, that it's just a temporary problem, that it'll be fixed soon. And they panic behind closed doors trying to figure out if it can be fixed at all. Second option, disappear, deleting accounts. They close Discord. Investors' money, if there was any, is already in the Bahamas. CASPA chose a third way. On the 22nd of November, the day after the crash, the developers published a full report. What happened, why it happened, what they planned to do about it, and what they were going to do was radical. Restart, full network restart, a new Genesis block from scratch, but not exactly from scratch. They took a checkpoint, the last known stable state of the network before the crash. All balances, all transactions up to that point are preserved. The new Genesis block has been stitched with that state. And most importantly, they provided cryptographic proof that they did not take advantage of the situation. No hidden pre-mining, no manipulation of balances, total transparency. Stop and think about how unusual that is. A project that has just suffered a catastrophic failure, which has no legal obligations to anyone. No ICO, no investors with contracts, which could just say, sorry, it didn't work out, and shut down. Instead, they publicly acknowledged the error, explained the technical reason, offered a solution, proved they weren't cheating, in a world where billion-dollar capitalization projects lie to investors' eyes, where founders disappear with their money, where technical problems is a euphemism for, we stole your money. CASPA has restarted. Honest. Openly. No attempt to cover my tracks. You know what's most ironic? This bug, this crash, this relaunch, they made CASPA stronger, not in the technical sense, in the sense of trust. Any project can talk about decentralization and honesty. Words are cheap. But when a crisis happens, then you can see who is who. The CASPA team has shown that it puts network security above its own reputation, that they are ready to admit mistakes instead of hiding them. Transparency is not a marketing slogan, but a principle. It was a trial by fire, and they passed it. After restarting, the network worked stably. The bug was fixed. Blocks came every second again. then every half a second, then 10 blocks per second. CASPA started doing what it was created to do, quietly, without pomp. While the rest of the market was going through another cycle of euphoria and collapse. By the end of the year 2021, a few thousand people knew about CASPA. Enthusiasts, technicians, those who read academic articles and look at code, not graphs. The price of the coin was close to zero. No listing on major exchanges, no media presence, but the network worked. Every day, every block, every second. The ghost took on flesh and began to gain strength. When I started this investigation, I was looking for a catch. An honest launch without an ICO? Suspicious? Academic roots instead of a marketing machine? Strange. A team that gave up the rights to the project and handed it over to the community? Almost unbelievable. I am used to the fact that in the crypto world, beautiful words hide the ugly truth. That behind every revolutionary project is someone's wallet. That decentralization is a meme, not a reality. CASPA broke this pattern, not because its creators are saints, not because they don't want money, but because they understand something important. Real value is created differently. Let's look at the numbers. Bitcoin, 1 block per 10 minutes, 7 transactions per second max, 2,099-year-old technology. Ethereum, 1 block per 15 seconds, about 30 transactions per second. Switch to proof of stake, abandoning mining. CASPA, 10 blocks per second, hundreds of transactions per second. Proof of work is preserved. Target is 100 blocks per second. It's not evolution, it's a different species. Bitcoin is a tank. Slow, clumsy, but virtually invulnerable. It was created for one purpose, to be digital gold, and it's doing it. Ethereum is a Swiss knife. It tries to do everything. Smart contracts, DeFi, NFT, world computer, and it chokes under the strain. Commissions skyrocket every time the network becomes popular. CASPA is a backbone, built not to store value or run applications, built for speed, for flow, for scale. But technical specs are only half the story. The second half is how this technology came to be. In the year 2013, no one paid Sampolinsky for the ghost study. It was academic work, pure science, trying to solve a problem that's interesting to solve. In 2015, Ethereum could take this technology for free. It was in the public domain, but they took the easier route. In 2017, when the whole world was going ICO crazy, Sampolinsky continued to write academic articles. Spectre, Phantom, years of work with no guarantee of results. In 2021, when it was possible to launch a token and raise hundreds of millions on an HGAP, the team chose an honest launch. No pre-mine, no tokens for insiders. It's not a business model, it's a principle. I often think about what separates real innovation from noise. Noise is when a project raises money on promises, when marketing is more important than the product, when the goal is to sell a token at a higher price and get out. Innovation is when someone spends years solving a problem that nobody asked them to solve, when code is written not for investors, but to work, when success is measured not by the price of a coin, but by the number of blocks per second. The crypto industry has forgotten that. It turned into a casino with extra steps, an endless cycle of pumps and dumps, into a competition of marketers, not engineers. And against this backdrop comes a project that does everything wrong. It's just like old times. No hype, no promises, just code that works. I don't know what will happen to CASPA in 5 years. Maybe it will become the basis for a new financial infrastructure. Maybe it will remain a niche project for enthusiasts. Maybe something even better will emerge. But I do know one thing. The Caspa story is not a coin story. It's a story about how progress works. Someone solves a problem that everyone thinks is unsolvable, publishes the result. The world ignores it. Years pass. The world continues to ignore, busy with more important things. Another hype, another bubble, another monkeys for $100,000. And then someone takes that forgotten idea and brings it to life. Without fanfare, without permission, just because they can. And the world begins to change, not with a bang, but with the quiet hum of running servers. How many more solutions are lying in the archives right now as we look at the charts? Caspa has shown that such solutions exist, that they can be found, that they can be realized. The Ghost Protocol has been gathering dust in academic journals for 8 years. 8 years. While the industry was losing billions on scams, while blockchains were choking under the strain, while everyone was looking for the next big thing. And the next big project was lying in plain sight, in the public domain, free of charge. No one was looking for him.